The bullets weren't the worst part. It was the silence that followed. The stunned, suffocating silence of 20 soldiers realizing the woman they'd spent 5 years dismissing as just a driver had just moved like a phantom of war. Her name was Emma Mitchell. To them, she was Sergeant Mitchell, Transportation. Quiet, competent, and utterly forgettable. But as she slid across the hood of the burning Humvee, her movements a lethal ballet of precision and speed. A single, chilling thought echoed in the smoke-filled air. Who the hell is she really? The answer, tattooed on her forearm and etched in the blood of traitors, would shatter their world and rewrite the rules of engagement at North Lake Air Force Base. The morning sun. A molten coin rising over the horizon cast long, deceptive shadows across the manicured grass of North Lake Air Force Base. It was a picture of serene military order, rows of gleaming aircraft, soldiers moving with crisp efficiency, the low hum of distant generators. A perfect day for a routine patrol. Or so they all thought. Sergeant Emma Mitchell stood ramrod straight in the briefing room, her blonde hair tucked neatly beneath her cap, her sharp green eyes fixed on a point just above her commanding officer's head. Outwardly, she was the very image of disciplined compliance. Inwardly, a tempest raged, a storm of suppressed instincts, honed skills screaming to be unleashed, and the quiet, corrosive burn of being perpetually underestimated. For 5 long years she had worn this skin, this persona of the unremarkable driver, like a second uniform, heavy and ill-fitting. Mitchell. Lieutenant Parker's voice cut through the drone of mission parameters, laced with its customary dismissive edge. You'll be driving the 3rd vehicle. Support only. Stay behind the line if we encounter any hostiles. Understood? The words were a familiar refrain, a cage built of low expectations. Just a driver. Nothing more. Yes, sir, Emma replied, her voice a flat, emotionless monotone. But beneath the table, her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of her assignment sheet, the paper crinkling under the pressure. The casual contempt was a daily ration. Captain Reynolds, lounging with arrogant ease, couldn't resist adding his barb. Try not to scratch the paint this time, Mitchell. Some of us actually went through combat training. The room erupted in a wave of smug chuckles, a sound that had long since ceased to sting, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Emma's face remained an impassive mask. She'd weathered worse storms, endured deeper cuts. 5 years of playing the invisible woman had forged her patience into tempered steel. For a fleeting, dangerous second, her mind drifted, a ghostly echo of another life. The scent of gunpowder and sweat in an elite training facility, the grueling drills, the weight of a sniper rifle, the unspoken camaraderie of warriors who moved in the shadows. A lifetime ago, buried under layers of deliberate mediocrity, convoy rolls out at 0600, dismissed. The soldiers scattered, a flurry of activity as they gathered gear and checked weapons with the boisterous confidence of men who believed they were untouchable. Emma moved with silent, lethal grace towards the motor pool, her steps measured, deliberate, a counterpoint to the surrounding chaos. While others slapped magazines into rifles with careless bravado, Emma performed a meticulous pre-operation check on her assigned Humvee. Fluid levels, tire pressure, comms equipment, defensive capabilities. Every bolt, every wire, every drop of oil was scrutinized. It was a ritual, a silent prayer to the gods of preparedness. What are you doing, Mitchell? It's just a milk run. Specialist Cooper laughed, slinging his rifle over his shoulder with a recklessness that made Emma's teeth clench. Standard procedure, sir, she replied automatically, her eyes never leaving the engine bay. Keep the cover. Stay invisible. The convoy assembled with textbook precision. 6 vehicles, 20 personnel, a snaking line of steel and khaki ready to pierce the scrubby, sun-baked terrain beyond the base gates. Emma slid behind the wheel of her Humvee, her hands adjusting the mirrors with practiced, economical movements. In the back seat, 3 young soldiers, fresh-faced and wide-eyed, their first patrol written in the nervous tremor of their hands, fidgeted. "First patrol for all of you, huh?" Emma asked, her gaze sweeping the horizon through the windshield, cataloging every dip, every rise, every potential blind spot. "You boys check your weapons?" Yes, ma'am," the youngest stammered, his eyes darting away, a clear, panicked lie. Without a word, Emma twisted in her seat, reaching back. Her hands, moving with the swift, sure touch of a surgeon, checked each weapon. She corrected safeties, seated magazines with a firm, authoritative click, and handed them back. The soldiers exchanged bewildered glances. "Just because I drive," Emma stated flatly, her voice cutting through their confusion like a knife, "doesn't mean I don't know protocol. Out here, protocol is the only thing keeping you breathing." The convoy rolled out, dust clouds billowing in their wake like the ghosts of forgotten battles. Emma's eyes were in constant motion, scanning the road, the distant ridges, the spacing between vehicles. A low, insistent thrum of unease vibrated in her gut. Something was off. The landscape felt too quiet, the air too still. "Comms check, all vehicles," crackled Lieutenant Parker's voice over the radio. Each vehicle responded in sequence, a chorus of board confirmations. When it was Emma's turn, she didn't just acknowledge. "Vehicle 3, clear comms. Visibility good," noting unusual lack of civilian traffic on Route Bravo. The radio went dead. The silence that followed her observation was thick, heavy with unspoken tension. "Just drive, Mitchell," Parker finally snapped, his annoyance a sharp static on the line. "That's your job." 20 minutes into the patrol, they entered the narrow serpentine pass between two towering rocky ridges. It was textbook kill zone territory, a place where the earth itself seemed to conspire against the unwary. Emma's shoulders tensed, every nerve ending screaming a silent alarm. "Vehicle 3, maintain distance," the radio barked. Emma was already reacting, her foot easing off the accelerator, letting her Humvee fall back, creating a crucial buffer of space between her and the lead vehicle. Her passengers noticed. "Why are we—" one began, his voice tight with sudden fear. The world exploded. A blinding, white-hot flash consumed the lead Humvee, vanishing it in an instant. The concussion wave hit Emma's vehicle like a physical blow, rocking it violently on its suspension. Glass shattered, metal screamed, and the air filled with the acrid stench of burning fuel and cordite. Training, buried deep but never extinguished, kicked in with the ferocity of a coiled spring. Emma slammed the brakes, wrenching the steering wheel, angling the heavy vehicle to use its bulk as a shield. "Contact left! Contact left!" Someone screamed over the radio before the channel dissolved into a hiss of static. Bullets began to ping and ricochet off the Humvee's armored skin, a deadly metallic rain. Chaos erupted, a living, breathing entity of terror and confusion. Soldiers scrambled, diving for cover behind shattered vehicles or into shallow ditches, their training evaporating under the onslaught of real, lethal fire. The second Humvee's windshield spiderwebbed under a hail of rounds. In the driver's seat, Emma Mitchell ceased to exist. In her place stood Major Emma Mitchell, Razor Team operator, pararescue jumper. 5 years of carefully constructed invisibility vaporized in the heat of the blast. Time didn't slow. It crystallized, every second stretching into a canvas of tactical possibilities. "Get out. Find cover behind the engine block, now!" Her voice, no longer flat and subservient, cracked like a whip, carrying the unmistakable chilling steel of absolute command. It brooked no argument. The young soldiers, paralyzed for only a heartbeat, obeyed, scrambling out of the vehicle with newfound urgency. Through the swirling smoke and dust, Emma's eyes locked onto Major Richards. The convoy commander had been thrown clear by the blast, now lying exposed and vulnerable beside the burning wreckage of his vehicle. Blood, dark and slick, was soaking through the fabric of his right leg. He was barely conscious. Between him and safety lay 30 yards of open, bullet-swept ground, a kill zone painted in the stark colors of death. "Lieutenant, the major's down." A voice crackled over the radio, thick with panic. "Shit. Hold positions. Wait for air support." Parker's voice was a shrill command, laced with the unmistakable tremor of a man in over his head. Emma's eyes narrowed. Air support was a death sentence for Richards. He wouldn't last 15 minutes, not with that kind of bleeding, not in this heat. Two soldiers from the fourth vehicle made a desperate, heroic lunge towards the major. They made it 5 yards before a concentrated burst of fire forced them to their knees. One screamed, clutching his shoulder as his buddy dragged him, bleeding, back to dubious safety. "We're pinned down," Parker yelled, his voice cracking. "Anyone have eyes on the shooters?" Emma had already done more than spot them. She'd counted them, 3 distinct firing positions arranged in a classic, if amateurish, triangular ambush pattern. Effective, deadly, and perfectly positioned. Her hand slid under her seat, retrieving not the standard-issue first aid kit, but a compact black medical bag stocked with paramedic-level supplies. No one had ever questioned why the driver carried it. No one had ever dared to ask. "Vehicle 3, provide covering fire to the west ridge," she commanded, her voice cutting through the din. Calm, authoritative, impossible to ignore. Short, controlled bursts. "Don't waste ammo." "But the lieutenant said," one of the young soldiers began, his voice trembling. "The lieutenant," Emma cut him off, her gaze never leaving the kill zone, "isn't watching our commanding officer bleed out. Fire when I move." Before they could protest further, Emma was gone. In one fluid, impossibly smooth motion, she slid across the hood of the Humvee, her body low and tight, presenting the smallest possible target. She hit the ground in a perfect combat roll, coming up in a crouch behind a small, jagged outcropping of rocks. The movement was pure, lethal grace, a dance she hadn't performed in 5 years, but one her body remembered with muscle-deep certainty. "Mitchell, get back to your vehicle. That's an order." Parker's voice exploded over the radio, laced with genuine, panicked fear, not for her safety, but for the crumbling ruins of his authority. Emma ignored him. Her mind was a tactical computer, calculating angles, distances, the rhythm of the enemy fire. She noted the pattern, a 3-second gap between volleys from the eastern positions. She waited, counting silently in her head. 3, 2, 1. She moved, not like a soldier, but like liquid shadow. She crossed the first 10 yards in a burst of speed that defied her years behind a steering wheel, a blur against the dusty backdrop. She dropped behind a burning tire just as a flurry of rounds kicked up a spray of dirt at her heels. From across the kill zone, Specialist Cooper stared, his mouth agape. "What the hell?" On cue, the young soldiers in Emma's Humvee opened fire, their rounds impacting the ridge where one ambush position was located. The enemy fire faltered, momentarily disrupted. Emma didn't hesitate. Another burst of movement, low and fast, brought her to a derelict stone wall, ancient and crumbling but blessedly bulletproof. 20 yards to go. Through the thinning smoke, she could see Major Richards more clearly. His eyes were open, glazed with shock and pain. The pool of blood beneath him had spread, a dark, ominous stain on the pale earth. Femoral artery. Maybe. Minutes, not hours. Parker was still shouting, trying to organize a defense, his voice a discordant symphony of confusion. This wasn't in the manual. This wasn't supposed to happen on a milk run. Emma checked her watch. 6 minutes since initial contact. Air support, 15 minutes out. Too long. She shrugged off her outer jacket, revealing a standard-issue t-shirt. Freedom of movement was paramount now. Protection was a luxury she couldn't afford. As she prepared for the final desperate dash, Lieutenant Parker spotted her. "Mitchell, stand down," he bellowed, his voice cracking with a fear that was rapidly curdling into rage. "That's an order." Emma ignored him. She measured the distance, calculated the timing, her body coiled like a spring. 3, 2, 1. She exploded from cover, not in a straight line, but in a zigzagging, unpredictable pattern, a human pinball designed to confuse and confound. Rounds tracked her, stitching the ground where she'd been a fraction of a second before, always a hair's breadth too late. The soldiers watched, stunned into silence as their just-a-driver executed a textbook combat approach that would have made their fiercest drill instructors weep with pride. Not a single wasted movement. Not a single misstep. 10 yards. 5. Emma dropped into a slide, skidding the final few feet through the dirt, coming to a halt beside Major Richards just as a fresh volley of enemy fire stitched the ground where she'd been standing a heartbeat before. The entire unit stared, jaws slack, eyes wide with disbelief. The impossible had just unfolded before them. "Who the hell is she?" Someone whispered, the question hanging in the smoke-filled air like a challenge. "Stay with me, Major." Emma's voice was calm, a steady anchor in the storm of chaos. Her hands, moving with the swift, sure precision of a battlefield surgeon, assessed his wounds. The femoral bleed confirmed her worst fears. She reached into her medkit, her fingers closing around a combat tourniquet. With practiced, brutal efficiency, she applied it high on his thigh. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. Major Richards' pain-clouded eyes flickered, focusing on her face. Recognition, hazy but undeniable, dawned. "Mitchell," he mumbled, his voice a ragged whisper. "What are you—" "Saving your life, sir," Emma replied, her hands already moving to his secondary injuries. Shrapnel wounds peppering his abdomen, a possible concussion. "Try not to move." Her mind flashed unbidden to another time, another place. The sharp, impatient voice of an instructor. "Too slow, Mitchell. In the field, you've got seconds, not minutes. Do it again." She pushed the memory aside, focusing. She administered a field dose of morphine, then began packing the smaller wounds with hemostatic gauze, her movements economical, practiced, the work of someone who had danced with death 1,000 times. "Mitchell," Richards mumbled again, his eyes struggling to focus. "You're not just—" "Transportation." "Not the time, sir," Emma replied curtly, her eyes scanning the battlefield, calculating angles, cover, escape routes. They were exposed, vulnerable. "I need covering fire on the East Ridge." She called out, her voice ringing with a natural authority that bypassed rank and protocol, compelling instant obedience. Soldiers, without thinking, turned their weapons towards the ridge, laying down suppressing fire. "Mitchell!" Parker's face was a mask of purple fury and utter confusion as he half-crawled, half-stumbled towards their position. The woman applying advanced battlefield medicine with chilling, textbook precision bore no resemblance to the quiet, obedient driver who'd never questioned an order. "Since when do you give tactical assessments?" "Since your current one will get him killed," Emma replied evenly, not even looking up from monitoring Richard's weakening pulse. A nearby explosion showered them with dirt and rock fragments. Emma instinctively threw herself over the major, shielding his body with her own. As she moved, her uniform sleeve caught on a twisted piece of metal from the wrecked vehicle. It tore, ripping from elbow to wrist, revealing her forearm. And on that forearm, stark and undeniable against her skin, was a faded, jagged scar. The distinctive, brutal signature of high-velocity shrapnel extraction. Not the kind a driver safely behind the wheel would ever earn. Specialist Rodriguez, providing cover fire nearby, saw it. His eyes widened, then narrowed with dawning, horrified recognition. That wasn't just any scar. That was the mark of forward deployment. Of special operations. "Special operations, Mitchell," Rodriguez breathed, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. "You've been downrange before." Emma met his gaze, steady, unblinking. "Focus on the ridge, Specialist," the firefight intensified. Emma quickly assembled a makeshift shield from twisted vehicle debris, positioning it to deflect fire from the most active enemy position. Her movements were fluid, economical, the work of someone who knew how to make the battlefield itself her ally. Lieutenant Parker was floundering, his commands growing more desperate, more disjointed. "Air support is 10 minutes out. Hold positions." Emma checked Richard's vitals again. His pulse was thready, his skin clammy. He didn't have 10 minutes. She turned to Rodriguez. "I need your smoke grenades." Rodriguez hesitated, his eyes flicking towards Parker for permission. "That wasn't a request." "Specialist," Emma said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous register that carried the unmistakable chilling tone of absolute command. It was a tone that brooked no refusal, that demanded instant, unquestioning obedience. Rodriguez, without another word, handed over his grenades. Parker finally found his voice, sputtering with impotent rage. "Mitchell, you are overstepping. Fall back to your vehicle now." Emma ignored him, checking the grenades with practiced, lethal efficiency. "We need to create a corridor for extraction. When I deploy smoke, I need suppressive fire on all 3 positions." She turned to the 3 young soldiers who had been her passengers. "You 3, prepare to move the Major when I give the signal. Straight back to Vehicle 5. It's the least damaged." "They will not," Parker began, his face contorted. Emma cut him off, her gaze locking onto his, steel meeting floundering authority. "With respect, Lieutenant, this isn't a debate." Her voice was calm, but the challenge was clear, hanging in the air between them like a drawn sword. "Unless you want to explain to command why you let a senior officer bleed out when extraction was possible." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sporadic crack of gunfire. Parker's authority, brittle and untested, was crumbling before the evident, terrifying expertise of a woman he'd dismissed for 5 years. Before he could formulate a response, Emma was moving, calculating wind direction, angles, trajectories. She primed the first grenade, her movements so fluid, so precise, they seemed choreographed by some unseen, deadly hand. "Ready to move on my mark," she called out. Suddenly, the undisputed center of the unit's fractured attention. Parker stood frozen, watching his command slip away, dissolving into the hands of a transport driver who moved like a ghost on the battlefield. Emma pulled the pin, released the spoon, and threw. The smoke grenade arced through the air, landing exactly where she intended. Instantly, thick, white smoke billowed, creating a swirling, concealing curtain. "Suppressive fire, now," she ordered. And to Parker's utter astonishment, the unit responded as one, their weapons roaring, laying down a wall of lead that pinned the enemy positions. As the bullets flew overhead, Emma deployed the second grenade, extending the corridor of concealment. She dropped back to Richard's side, checking his tourniquet one final time. "You're going home, sir," she promised, her voice low and fierce. She signaled the 3 young soldiers. They moved forward, lifting the Major onto an improvised stretcher with a newfound confidence born of her unwavering command. "Go, stay in the smoke," Emma commanded, covering their retreat with her sidearm. A weapon she handled with a familiarity that was deeply, unsettlingly professional. As they disappeared into the smoke with their precious cargo, Emma held her position, a lone sentinel providing covering fire. When a shooter popped up on the west ridge, she acquired the target and neutralized the threat with 2 precise, economical shots. The kind of shooting that spoke of thousands of hours on the range, of a mind and body honed to lethal perfection. Rodriguez stared at her, awe replacing his earlier confusion. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Emma ejected the empty magazine and reloaded in one smooth, fluid motion, never taking her eyes off the ridgeline. "Not in transportation school." The battlefield erupted anew. Incoming rounds pinged off metal and kicked up geysers of dirt around her position. With fluid, unhurried precision, she scooped up a discarded M4 rifle, checked the chamber with a practiced flick of her wrist, and returned fire in controlled, 3-round bursts. Each shot found its mark. Each trigger pull was measured, deliberate, textbook perfection that military instructors spent careers trying to instill. "Holy shit," Cooper whispered, watching her engage multiple targets without wasting a single round. "She's shooting better than our damn marksmanship instructor." Emma's mind flashed. Momentarily to a different time, a different voice, weathered and wise. "Remember, Mitchell, you're invisible until you choose not to be. Some battles are won from the shadows." The memory dissolved as Lieutenant Parker scrambled to her position, fury and confusion warring on his face. "Fall back to the perimeter." "That's a direct order," he shouted, trying to be heard over the cacophony. Emma assessed the tactical situation in a split second. "With respect, sir, your perimeter has 3 weak points and insufficient cover on the southern approach." She fired twice more, dropping an enemy fighter attempting to flank their position. "We need to consolidate around vehicles 4 and 5, establish fire superiority, then execute a tactical withdrawal." Parker stared at her, momentarily speechless. The language, the assessment, the absolute, unshakable certainty in her voice. This wasn't a driver talking. This was a commander, "Who the hell are you?" He finally managed to choke out. Emma ignored the question, keying her radio. "All units, concentrate fire on the eastern ridge, Sector 2. Suppressive fire only. Conserve ammunition." To Parker's utter disbelief, the radio crackled with immediate, crisp acknowledgments. His troops were following her orders. "You're undermining my command." Parker hissed, his face inches from hers. "I'm trying to save these soldiers," Emma replied evenly, her eyes never leaving the battlefield, scanning, assessing, commanding. "Sir." Rodriguez had worked his way to their position, his eyes fixed on Emma with growing, dawning certainty. "Those radio codes you're using," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "That's not standard protocol. That's JTF comms." Emma's face revealed nothing, but her silence was a deafening confirmation. "Mitchell," Rodriguez pressed, his voice dropping even lower. "What unit were you with?" Before she could respond, a fresh volley of enemy fire forced them to duck lower. Emma calculated angles, wind speed, distance, her mind a tactical supercomputer. "Bravo, team. Adjust fire 15 degrees north." "They're using the ridgeline for cover." Her directions were precise, professional, delivered with the calm authority of a seasoned battlefield commander. "Alpha team, I need eyes on the vehicle wreckage at our 10 o'clock. Movement behind the burning hull." Parker watched, dumbfounded, as his troops snapped to attention and followed her instructions without hesitation. The tactical situation, moments ago teetering on the brink of disaster, immediately stabilized. Enemy fire became sporadic, less coordinated, less effective. "Air support, 5 minutes out." The radio crackled. Emma nodded to herself. "Not soon enough. We need to move now." She turned to Rodriguez. "Can you establish a suppression corridor to Vehicle 4? "Affirmative," he replied instantly. The ma'am nearly slipped out despite her lower, assumed rank. Emma laid out a rapid, flawless extraction plan, balancing speed with safety, accounting for wounded, ammunition, and fields of fire with a comprehensive awareness that bordered on the preternatural. As she spoke, her torn sleeve rode up further. Rodriguez's eyes, sharp and observant, caught something on her inner forearm. A partial tattoo, mostly hidden by the remnants of her uniform. His eyes widened slightly, then filled with stunned recognition. "Lieutenant," Emma concluded, turning to Parker, whose authority had effectively evaporated, replaced by the undeniable efficient command of the woman beside him. "We need to move the wounded immediately. I'll coordinate rear security." Parker's options were stark. Assert his crumbling authority and risk the lives of his men, or accept the reality that someone with vastly superior training and presence had taken charge. "Fine," he conceded, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "Execute your plan." Emma nodded once, a curt, professional gesture, then moved to position. She collected extra magazines from nearby equipment, checking each one with lethal efficiency before distributing them to key firing positions. 30 seconds to initiate, she announced over the radio. "On my mark, staged withdrawal by teams. Medical team moves first with all wounded." As the unit prepared to move, Emma positioned herself where she could provide maximum overlapping fields of fire. She wielded the rifle now with a familiarity that spoke of thousands of hours of specialized, brutal training. "You handled that weapon like you were born with it," Cooper commented, now watching her with a mixture of terror and newfound, profound respect. "Focus on your sector," Emma replied flatly, her eyes never stopping their relentless scan of the battlefield. The extraction began precisely as Emma had outlined. Teams moved in coordinated waves, providing cover fire while others fell back to safer positions. The wounded, including Major Richards, were prioritized, protected, and moved with smooth, practiced efficiency. Throughout the maneuver, Emma's situational awareness was uncanny. She anticipated enemy movements before they happened, adjusted fire patterns to counter threats before they fully materialized. "Movement, 3 o'clock, someone shouted. Before anyone else could even turn, Emma had acquired the target and neutralized the threat with 2 precise, echoing shots. "How did you even see that?" Parker asked, genuine disbelief warring with a dawning, reluctant respect in his voice. Emma didn't answer. She was already focused on the next phase, the next threat, the next life to save. Her radio discipline, her tactical communications, revealed another layer of her hidden identity. She used shorthand, operational language, and protocols that only someone with deep special operations experience would know. Rodriguez continued to observe her, his certainty growing with every passing second. He'd served as communication support for Joint Task Force operations. He recognized the patterns, the precision, the unmistakable signature of elite Black Ops training. "Who the hell are you really, Mitchell?" he asked quietly during a fleeting lull in the firefight. Emma checked her ammunition, her eyes never ceasing their constant, vigilant sweep of the battlefield. "Right now, I'm the person getting us home." "That's not what I asked," Rodriguez pressed. Emma's eyes briefly met his. For a fleeting moment something flickered there, a history, a weight, a secret carried in silence for too long. Then the moment was shattered. Contact front. A fresh wave of attackers emerged from concealed positions. Emma responded instantly, shifting her fire, calling out targets with chilling, uncanny precision. 12 o'clock. 2 tangos moving left to right. Second team behind the rock formation preparing to flank. In the chaos, as she pressed against the rough metal of their cover, her sleeve tore further. The tattoo became more visible. The distinctive outline of wings, and the hilt of a dagger piercing through them. Rodriguez's eyes widened in absolute, stunned recognition. "You're," he began. Later, Emma cut him off, already moving to counter the new threat, her voice a command that brooked no argument. "Focus on getting everyone out alive. That's all that matters right now." The radio crackled. "Air support, 2 minutes out." "Hold positions." "Copy that," Emma replied instantly. "We have multiple wounded. Request immediate dust-off capability." She turned to Parker, who was staring at her with a mixture of resentment and a dawning, awestruck respect. "Sir, we need to establish a landing zone. Vehicle 5 has the necessary clearance if we provide adequate security." Parker nodded, stiffly, the gesture one of surrender. "Make it happen." As Emma coordinated the final, frantic phase of their extraction, directing soldiers into a defensive perimeter with crisp, undeniable commands, the torn sleeve of her uniform revealed more of her forearm, more of her hidden past. The tattoo was no longer a partial mystery. "Who the hell are you really, Mitchell?" Lieutenant Parker finally demanded, his voice tight with a confusion that was rapidly turning into horrified comprehension as the distinctive whump, whump, whump of helicopter rotors grew louder, drowning out the sporadic gunfire. Emma positioned soldiers with lethal efficiency, her commands sharp, clear, impossible to ignore. "Secure the LZ. I need 360 coverage." She moved with a purpose, a deadly grace, checking fields of fire, adjusting positions with a tactical precision that couldn't be faked, couldn't be learned in a classroom. "Rodriguez, pop smoke when I give the signal." The medevac chopper, a sleek, deadly angel of mercy, appeared over the ridge, banking sharply to approach the improvised landing zone. Emma keyed her radio, her voice calm, professional, communicating with the pilot using protocols and terminology that soared far, far beyond standard training. "Dust off 6-4. This is ground element. LZ is hot, taking fire from the northeast ridge. Approach from heading 270 for maximum cover. We have 3 urgent surgical, 4 priority." The pilot's voice crackled back, crisp and professional. "Copy that, ground. Coming in hot." As Emma coordinated the final perilous approach, she dropped to one knee beside Major Richards, checking his vitals one last time. The tourniquet had held. He was pale, shocky, but stable. Richards' eyes fluttered open, focusing with surprising clarity on Emma's face. "Mitchell, knew you weren't. Just a driver." His gaze drifted down to her exposed forearm, where the torn sleeve revealed the full, stark design of the tattoo. Recognition, sharp and clear despite the pain and medication, flickered in his eyes. "You're one of them." Thought that program was classified. Emma quickly adjusted her position, trying to cover the tattoo, but it was too late. Rodriguez had seen enough. His eyes widened with a mixture of awe and absolute, stunned disbelief. "That's a PJ tattoo," he breathed, his voice filled with reverence. "Pararescue jumpers. The dagger through wings. That's their symbol." Emma's face remained impassive, a mask of professional calm, but her silence was a thunderous confirmation. The helicopter descended through a swirling curtain of smoke, its rotors whipping the dust into blinding, stinging clouds. Emma directed the loading of the wounded with the swift, sure efficiency of someone who had performed this grim ballet countless times under fire. "Urgent surgical first. Secure them for immediate transport," she shouted over the deafening roar of the engines. As she helped lift Major Richards onto the aircraft, her torn sleeve caught on the helicopter's doorframe, ripping further. The tattoo was now fully, undeniably visible to everyone. A dagger piercing through angelic wings, with partial text visible beneath. Rodriguez read it aloud, his voice thick with awe. "These things we do." Emma finished the sacred creed quietly, her eyes meeting his for the first time without their usual guarded veil. "That others may live." Lieutenant Parker stared at the tattoo, then at Emma. Comprehension finally, irrevocably dawning. "You're pararescue. A PJ. That's impossible." They don't. He couldn't finish the sentence, the ingrained prejudice of a bygone era choking him. "What, Lieutenant?" Emma challenged, her voice tight, coiled with 5 years of suppressed frustration. "Accept women. Times change. Programs evolve. Some just remain classified." Parker's face flushed crimson with embarrassment and confusion. "But you're just a transport driver." "For 5 years," Emma cut him off, her voice like ice. "I've been following orders, just not the ones you thought." A fresh volley of enemy fire interrupted the conversation. Emma reacted instantly, shoving Parker down, shielding his body with her own as rounds impacted the ground nearby. Her reaction was instinctive, immediate, the ingrained muscle memory of someone trained to protect, to serve, to sacrifice. "The rest of the wounded need to move now," she ordered, returning fire with a deadly, economical precision that silenced the enemy position. "Cooper, Rodriguez, get them aboard." As the final wounded were loaded, Emma held her defensive position, covering their retreat, the pararescue tattoo now a blazing emblem on her arm, transforming her in the eyes of the unit. The mystery was solved. The impossible skills had an explanation, and it was more awe-inspiring, more terrifying than any of them could have imagined. Rodriguez worked his way to her position, firing controlled bursts. "You're really a PJ? I thought the female program was just a rumor." "Focus on the mission, specialist," Emma replied, though a hint of something, pride, softened the edge of her tone for a fleeting second. "How many of you are there?" he pressed, unable to contain his curiosity. Emma's eyes never stopped scanning for threats. "Not enough. Never enough," the helicopter pilot signaled readiness. "Final chalk. Move now," Emma ordered. 30 seconds to dust off. As they prepared to board, Parker finally found his voice again, the question burning in his mind. "Why the hell were you assigned as a driver if you're pararescue? That makes no sense." Emma ejected an empty magazine, slapping in her last full one with lethal, practiced efficiency. "Not all missions look like missions, Lieutenant. Sometimes observation is more valuable than action." Before Parker could formulate a response, a barrage of fire erupted from a previously quiet sector. Emma spotted the threat instantly. 3 attackers flanking their position, closing in on the helicopter's blind spot. "Contact rear," she shouted, already moving to intercept. What happened next left the entire unit, even the battle-hardened medics, utterly speechless. Emma engaged all 3 threats with a level of skill that transcended elite training. Her movements were fluid, silent, lethally economical. She moved like a ghost, a shadow given form and purpose. She neutralized the immediate danger with a precision, a grace, a terrifying efficiency that spoke of thousands of hours in the most brutal training environments on Earth. It was combat ballet at its most deadly. As the final attacker fell, Emma turned back towards the waiting helicopter, blood streaming from a graze on her shoulder, a wound she hadn't even acknowledged. The full pararescue tattoo was now clearly, proudly visible to everyone. The dagger through wings, the sacred motto, a symbol of angels who walked among men, armed with rifles and tourniquets. Parker stared at her, his earlier arrogance, his casual contempt, utterly obliterated, replaced by stunned, humbled recognition. "You're not just any PJ, are you? What's your actual clearance level, Mitchell?" Emma simply gestured towards the helicopter, her voice calm, commanding. "We need to move, sir." As they boarded, Rodriguez couldn't contain his amazement. "I've worked with regular PJs before. None of them move like you just did." Emma secured herself in the vibrating belly of the helicopter as it lifted off, the ground falling away. For the first time, a hint of genuine, unguarded pride broke through her carefully maintained, stoic facade. That's because most of them weren't selected for Razor Team. Parker's head snapped up, his eyes wide with dawning, horrified comprehension. Razor Team? That's a Tier 1 unit. Black Operations. How could you possibly— 5 years. Emma cut him off, her voice flat, final, of being just a driver. Lieutenant? Next time, maybe don't judge your personnel by their assigned roles. As the helicopter thundered across the desert, carrying its precious cargo of wounded back to North Lake, the full, staggering impact of what had happened began to sink in. The quiet, unremarkable, perpetually overlooked transport driver they'd dismissed, belittled, and sent for coffee for 5 long years was actually an elite special operator on an extended deep-cover Black Ops assignment. The realization spread through the soldiers like wildfire, a contagion of disbelief, burgeoning respect, and a deep, abiding shame. Emma worked alongside the flight medic in the cargo hold, her hands moving with practiced surgical efficiency as she monitored Major Richard's vital signs. "BP dropping," the medic announced. "We need to re-establish that IV line." Before he could even reach for his kit, Emma had located a vein and was inserting the needle with flawless precision. "Got it. Push 1 unit of plasma, then reassess." The medic stared at her, his surprise palpable. "That's advanced field medicine. Where did you— PJs are combat medics first," Emma replied simply, adjusting the flow rate with hands that knew every inch of the human body under duress. "This is basic training where I come from." From across the vibrating cabin, Lieutenant Parker watched her, a tumultuous mix of awe and profound discomfort churning within him. His entire world, his understanding of rank, skill, and authority, had been violently upended. For 5 years, he'd dismissed Emma Mitchell as support staff, someone to be ordered around, someone beneath his notice. Now, he was witnessing skills, a calm, lethal competence that far surpassed his own extensive training. "You said Razor Team," he finally spoke up, raising his voice over the deafening rotor noise. "That's deep Black Ops. Most officers at my level don't even have confirmation it exists." Emma finished securing the IV line before responding, her voice calm, professional. "There's a reason for that, Lieutenant." "How many others like you are there?" Parker pressed, his curiosity warring with his humiliation. "Embedded in regular units." Emma's eyes briefly met his. "That's classified above your pay grade, sir." The subtle, almost imperceptible emphasis on his rank was a masterstroke, a quiet, devastating reminder of the gulf that now lay between them. Whatever game was being played, Emma Mitchell was operating on a level far, far above his own. Rodriguez leaned forward, unable to contain his own burning curiosity. The rumors about female PJs— the program was supposedly shut down years ago. "Some programs," Emma replied cryptically, her eyes never leaving her patient, "never officially exist. Makes them easier to disavow if necessary." A young soldier, cradling a shrapnel wound in his arm, watched Emma work, his eyes wide with dawning realization. "That's why you always knew exactly what to do during field exercises. You weren't guessing. You were holding back." Emma's hands never paused in their life-saving work, but the corner of her mouth twitched, the barest hint of acknowledgement. "Focus on staying still, Private. That artery needs to remain stable." Major Richard stirred on his stretcher, his eyes fluttering open. Despite the pain and the drugs, recognition, sharp and clear, dawned as he focused on Emma. "Mitchell," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I remember now. Cairo. 3 years ago. You were there." Emma's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes conveyed a silent, urgent warning. "Rest, sir. We'll be at the base soon, but Richards wasn't finished. You pulled out. That diplomatic team, when everyone else said it couldn't be done." The other soldiers exchanged sharp, startled glances. Cairo. There had been whispers, rumors of a near-impossible classified extraction of embassy personnel during a brutal civil war 3 years prior. Details were scarce, classified, but the legend of an unnamed, ghostly special operations team had circulated. "I think you're confused, sir," Emma said carefully, her voice low, controlled. "That was before my time at North Lake." Richards managed a weak, knowing smile. "Your tattoo, saw it then. Same one. Never forget. The angel who brought us home." A heavy, profound silence fell over the helicopter's interior, thick with unspoken awe and the weight of revelation. Emma focused intently on checking Richard's bandages, avoiding the stares now fixed upon her like spotlights. Parker's expression hardened, the last vestiges of his resistance crumbling. "Mitchell, I want answers. Now. What's your actual rank and clearance? Who do you really report to?" Emma straightened. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The careful mask of the unassuming driver, the stoic PJ, even the efficient major, fell away completely. In its place stood a figure of absolute, chilling authority. Her posture shifted, her shoulders squaring, her presence filling the cramped space, commanding it effortlessly. "My actual rank," she said, her voice carrying a natural, undeniable authority that made Parker instinctively sit up straighter. "Is classified, Lieutenant?" She paused, letting the words sink in. "As for who I report to, not anyone in your chain of command." Cooper, nursing his own minor wound nearby, whispered to his buddy, his voice filled with horrified realization. "Holy. All those times we made her wait for us in the motor pool. All those coffee runs we sent her on." His friend replied, his face pale. "The coffee at the North Barracks was better." She was right. Emma heard them, of course. She always heard everything. "The coffee at the North Barracks," she said, a ghost of dry humor touching her voice, "was actually better. You guys just never asked." The helicopter began its descent towards North Lake, the familiar buildings appearing through the dust-streaked windows. Emma turned her attention to preparing the wounded for transfer, her voice crisp, commanding, impossible to ignore. "Medical team will take priority on landing. Lieutenant Parker, coordinate with base security for perimeter coverage. Rodriguez, I need communications with Command Center the moment we touch down." Both men found themselves nodding instantly. Automatically, before the realization hit them, they were taking orders. Crisp, efficient orders from someone they'd considered a subordinate mere hours ago. "Priority triage protocols," Emma continued, checking Richard's vitals one final time. "Major first, then Alvarez with the chest wound, then Cooper with the arterial bleed." The flight medic frowned. Cooper's wound was classified as minor. "Check his left axillary pulse," Emma interrupted without looking up, her voice calm, certain. "Secondary fragment penetration, probably during the second volley. He's compensating, but his pressure is dropping." The medic quickly examined Cooper and found exactly what Emma had described. A small, nearly hidden entry wound under his arm, slowly, insidiously leaking life. "How did you even notice that?" the medic asked, immediately applying pressure. Emma didn't answer, watching, observing, noticing everything. While appearing to see nothing, the helicopter touched down on the landing pad with a gentle bump. Medical teams rushed forward as the doors slid open. Emma directed the offloading with calm, lethal precision, ensuring Major Richards received immediate, prioritized attention. As the wounded were whisked away towards the medical facility, a stern-faced colonel approached the landing zone, his eyes locking onto Emma with laser focus. "Mitchell," he called out, his voice sharp, commanding. "Briefing room, now." Emma nodded once, turning to Parker and Rodriguez. You two as well. Full debrief required. Parker bristled, the last gasp of his wounded pride flaring. I'm the ranking officer from the patrol. I should be conducting the debrief. The colonel overheard and fixed Parker with a withering, ice-cold stare that could freeze hell. Lieutenant, you're speaking to a superior officer. Adjust your tone accordingly. Parker's jaw dropped. Sir, Mitchell is a sergeant in transportation. Mitchell, the colonel cut him off, his voice like a whip crack, is whatever she needs to be for the mission. And right now, she outranks you considerably. Several nearby soldiers who had witnessed the exchange froze, staring at Emma with utterly transformed eyes. The quiet, unremarkable driver they'd ignored for 5 years was suddenly, terrifyingly, revealed as someone who commanded the respect, the instant obedience of a full-bird colonel. Emma didn't react to the revelation, simply gesturing towards the command building with cool, professional detachment. After you, Lieutenant. As they walked across the tarmac, Rodriguez couldn't contain himself any longer. The question burned in his mind. So, what is your actual rank? Emma's lips quirked in the barest hint of a smile, a ghost of the woman beneath the operator. Let's just say I've earned the right to fly a desk if I wanted to. I just prefer the field, Major, Rodriguez guessed, studying her with newfound, profound respect. Emma's expression gave nothing away, but the colonel walking ahead of them chuckled, a low, knowing sound. You're thinking too small, Specialist. The colonel led them to a secure briefing room, dismissing the regular staff with a sharp, curt gesture. Once the heavy, soundproof door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, he turned to Emma. Your cover's blown, obviously. How bad is the compromise? Emma removed her torn, blood-stained uniform shirt, revealing a black compression shirt beneath. With the pretense gone, her entire physicality shifted subtly. Her posture straightened, her shoulders squared, her very presence radiating a quiet, lethal authority. The transformation was subtle but absolute. This was not the same person who had driven transport vehicles for 5 years. This was the apex predator emerging from its carefully constructed camouflage. Minimal, sir, Emma reported, her voice crisp, professional, confined to the patrol unit. Major Richards recognized me from Cairo, but he's been sedated. His statement can be managed. The colonel nodded, then turned his steely gaze on Parker and Rodriguez. What you've witnessed today is classified top secret. Disclosure will result in immediate court-martial under national security protocols. Is that understood? Both men nodded, still visibly struggling to process the seismic shift in their reality. Emma pulled a sleek, encrypted satellite phone from a hidden compartment in her boot, equipment no regular driver would ever carry, and connected it to the room's secure systems. Instantly, high-resolution satellite imagery of the ambush site appeared on the main screen. The attack pattern, Emma assessed, her finger tracing key areas on the screen with lethal precision, suggests local insurgents, but the timing and positioning indicate inside information. Someone knew our patrol route and schedule. The colonel frowned, his mind racing. Recommendations? Emma didn't hesitate. Full communication security audit. Restrict patrol information to need-to-know basis only. And I need to review the duty roster for the past month. Patterns of information access might reveal our leak. Parker stared in utter disbelief as Emma and the colonel discussed operational security at a level far, far beyond his clearance. The transportation driver he'd dismissed for years was now controlling the room, dictating security protocols with quiet, undeniable authority. Sir, Parker finally interrupted, his voice tight with a confusion that was rapidly turning into horrified comprehension. I still don't understand. What exactly is Mitchell's role here? The colonel exchanged a brief, silent glance with Emma, who gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Lieutenant Parker, the colonel began, his voice grave. Sergeant Mitchell is actually Major Mitchell. She's been operating undercover at North Lake for the past 5 years as part of a deep intelligence-gathering operation. The details remain classified, but today's ambush may be directly connected to her actual mission. Parker's face drained of all color as the staggering implications crashed over him like a tidal wave. For 5 years, he'd been giving orders, often dismissive, often disrespectful, to a superior officer, one from an elite, whispered about unit he'd only heard rumors of. Major, he repeated weakly, the word feeling alien on his tongue. But that would mean that she's been watching and reporting on everything that happens at this base, Emma finished for him, her voice clinical, detached. Including your leadership style, Lieutenant. Parker's expression cycled through shock, profound embarrassment, and finally, a dawning, stomach-churning horror as he recalled specific, cringeworthy instances of his condescension towards the quiet driver. The Dunham exercise, he said suddenly, his voice hollow. When I overrode your suggestion about the route, and lost half my platoon to the OP for ambush. Yes, Emma confirmed, her tone flat, devoid of emotion. That was in my weekly assessment. Rodriguez couldn't suppress a low, impressed whistle. So, all those times you were just sitting quietly in the motor pool. I was working, Emma confirmed, her green eyes sharp, intelligent. You'd be surprised what people say around the just a driver they don't consider important enough to notice. She pulled up the personnel files on the secure system, accessing them with clearance levels that made Parker's eyes widen in stunned disbelief. For 5 years, I've been tracking a pattern of intelligence leaks from North Lake, she explained, displaying a chilling timeline of security breaches. 4 previous patrol ambushes, 2 compromised training exercises, multiple intelligence assessments reaching enemy hands within hours of distribution. The colonel pulled up additional satellite imagery, his face grim. The ambush was sophisticated, not typical for local insurgents. Emma studied the images with practiced, lethal ease. The spacing of the firing position suggests formal military training. The attackers knew our vulnerabilities and exploited them effectively. She highlighted several key areas. These positions here and here. Those are textbook Special Forces placement. This wasn't random. She manipulated the satellite feed with swift, confident efficiency. The primary killing zone was perfectly positioned to catch the convoy at its most vulnerable point. They knew our vehicle spacing, our standard response protocols, even which vehicle carried the commanding officer. Parker watched her work, truly seeing Emma Mitchell for the first time. The quiet efficiency, the absolute, unshakable confidence, the precise, economical movements of someone who had operated at the absolute pinnacle of military specialization. Who trained you? He asked suddenly, the question bursting from him. The female PJ program was experimental. But you're something else entirely. Emma's eyes remained fixed on the satellite imagery, but her voice was steady, laced with a quiet, simmering intensity. Same people who trained the men, Lieutenant. I just had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. The colonel nodded grimly. Mitchell holds the current North Lake base record for the qualification course, set during her first week here, disguised as a fitness evaluation. No one's come close to touching her time since. Parker remembered that day vividly. The quiet new driver who had demolished the notoriously brutal course, then simply vanished back into the anonymity of the transportation pool. They'd written it off as a fluke. Some had even joked the timers must have malfunctioned. Why maintain the cover for 5 years? Rodriguez asked, his voice filled with awe. That's a long-term, deep cover assignment. Emma finally looked up from the imagery, her gaze sharp, focused, lethal. Because someone at North Lake has been selling patrol routes and security details to hostile forces. 4 ambushes in 3 years isn't coincidence. Today's attack confirms my intelligence assessment. She pulled up a classified file displaying 3 personnel profiles. All senior non-commissioned officers with access to patrol scheduling and route planning. These individuals have been under surveillance. One of them accessed today's patrol information at 0200 this morning, well outside their duty requirements. The room fell into a heavy, profound silence. The implication was horrifying, a betrayal that cut to the very core of their brotherhood. A traitor within their ranks. Someone selling out their fellow soldiers for blood money. You've been hunting a mole, Parker realized aloud, the words tasting like ash. All this time, Emma nodded once, a curt, professional gesture. And today, they made a mistake. The ambush pattern matches previous incidents too precisely. Narrows my suspect pool considerably. She highlighted communication logs showing unauthorized access to secure systems. Staff Sergeant Wilson has been our primary suspect for the past 18 months. Today's events all but confirm it. The colonel pulled up additional personnel files. Mitchell has identified 3 potential suspects. Today's patrol assignment helps confirm one of them. Emma displayed a complex network diagram, a spiderweb of financial transactions routed through shadowy offshore accounts. Wilson has received 8 payments, corresponding exactly with previous intelligence breaches. The most recent was this morning. $10,000 transferred to a shell account in the Cayman Islands. As they delved deeper into the security breach, a medical officer knocked and entered with an update. Major Richards is stabilized. He's asking to speak with you specifically, Sergeant Mitchell. Emma exchanged a glance with the colonel, who nodded. Go. We'll continue the analysis. As Emma prepared to leave, Parker suddenly stood at rigid attention, a gesture that felt alien and uncomfortable after 5 years of casual dismissal. Ma'am, he said, the address awkward, unfamiliar, laden with a shame he couldn't hide. I owe you an apology. Emma paused at the door. For a fleeting moment, the hardened operator's facade softened, just a fraction. You treated me exactly as my cover required, Lieutenant. No apology necessary. A hint of a dry, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. Though your vehicle maintenance protocols could use some work. She departed for the medical facility, leaving Parker and Rodriguez to grapple with the staggering revelation that had turned their world upside down. 5 years, Rodriguez said quietly, the words heavy with awe. 5 years of taking orders, being dismissed, doing menial tasks, all while being a decorated special operations officer. The colonel, overhearing, nodded grimly. That's why Mitchell's the best we have. Complete commitment to the mission. Absolute ego subordination. His eyes narrowed, fixing Parker with a pointed stare. Something many officers never master. Lieutenant Parker nodded, the lesson landing with the force of a sledgehammer. Yes, sir. In the sterile, quiet environment of the medical facility, Emma moved with purpose to Richard's bedside. The major was pale but alert, his leg heavily bandaged where her tourniquet had saved his life. Mitchell, he greeted her, his voice stronger now. Or should I call you by your actual rank? Emma checked his medical readouts with swift professional efficiency before responding. Mitchell is fine, sir. Richard studied her face, his eyes sharp despite the lingering effects of medication. I remember everything now. Cairo, you led the extraction team that pulled us out when the embassy was overrun. His voice lowered, filled with a profound gratitude. You took a bullet pulling my attaché to safety. Emma's hand unconsciously moved to her side, where a faded scar remained, a permanent reminder of that brutal, chaotic night. Just doing my job, sir. Your job? Richards repeated with a weak, incredulous laugh. You saved 18 lives that day, including mine. Then you vanished. And now I find you driving trucks at North Lake. His eyes sharpened, piercing. What kind of operation rates someone with your skills playing chauffeur for 5 years? Emma checked that they were alone before responding, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. The kind where American soldiers are dying because someone inside is selling information. The kind worth 5 years of my career, if it means bringing them to justice. Richard's expression hardened, the face of a soldier who understood the cost of betrayal. You're close, aren't you? That's why today happened. Emma nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement. Very close, sir. Today's ambush confirmed my primary suspect. Who? Staff Sergeant Wilson, Communications Division. He's been selling patrol routes and operational details for at least 3 years. Richard's jaw tightened. Wilson, he runs half the comms for forward operations. Exactly why he was able to operate undetected for so long, Emma replied, her voice cold, lethal. He had legitimate access to everything he needed. Richards reached out, his hand surprisingly strong as he grasped her wrist. The others need to know who you really are, what you've done. The unit deserves to understand. My cover is blown, Richards. It's finished. Your actions today saved lives, Mitchell. Richards insisted, his eyes holding hers with fierce intensity. "But more importantly, the truth about who you are and what you've been doing here needs to come out." His voice was low, filled with conviction. "Some battles are won in the shadows, but some truths need the light." Darkness had fallen over North Lake Base, a cloak of night that did little to hide the seismic shift that had occurred. The ambushed patrol unit had been debriefed, treated, and released to quarters. All except Emma. For her, the most critical, most dangerous phase of her 5-year mission was just beginning. In the secure, humming command center, Emma had shed the last vestiges of her cover identity. She stood clad in proper, form-fitting black tactical gear, a stark contrast to the deliberately baggy, ill-fitting transportation utilities she'd worn for 5 years. The transformation was breathtaking. Her posture, her movements, everything about her radiated a quiet, lethal confidence, an economy of motion that spoke of thousands of hours of specialized, brutal training. This was the real Emma Mitchell. No more masks, no more hiding. She checked her equipment with swift, lethal efficiency. Tactical vest, encrypted comms gear, sidearm. Each movement was precise, economical, a deadly dance she knew by heart. This was Major Emma Mitchell, pararescue jumper, Razor Team operator, deep cover intelligence agent. She adjusted the specialized tactical holster on her thigh, a custom rig holding a modified sidearm, not standard issue, but a tool specific to her elite unit. Surveillance confirms Target Alpha is moving to the communications center, reported a specialist monitoring the bank of security feeds. "Exactly as you predicted, Major." Emma nodded, checking her sidearm with lethal, practiced efficiency. "Security teams in position?" "Yes, ma'am. All exits covered. QRF standing by." She studied the tactical display, a glowing map of the base with key personnel movements highlighted in real time. 5 years of patient, meticulous observation, of careful data collection, of living a lie, had led to this moment. The betrayal of American forces, the blood of her brothers and sisters, would end tonight. The colonel joined her at the display. 5 years of work comes down to the next 30 minutes. "You sure you don't want to let the security team handle the apprehension?" Emma's eyes remained fixed on the monitor, tracking her target's progress through the base's arteries. 5 years, sir. I need to see this through personally." Her mind flashed, unbidden, to the faces of soldiers lost in previous ambushes, men and women whose deaths could be directly, coldly attributed to the intelligence Wilson had sold. She had memorized each name. She had carried the weight of their loss, a crushing burden, through every day of her undercover assignment. "Understood," the colonel said, handing her a secure comm unit. "Team channel is secure. We move on your signal." Emma inserted the earpiece, performed a quick, silent radio check. For the first time in 5 years, she was operating openly, fully as herself. The weight of the lie was lifting, replaced by the clean, sharp focus of the hunt. The door opened and Lieutenant Parker entered hesitantly. He stopped short, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of Emma in her tactical gear. The transformation was absolute, terrifying. The PJ tattoo, the dagger through wings, was now prominently, proudly displayed on her forearm, no longer hidden by baggy fabric. "Lieutenant," Emma acknowledged him with a curt nod. Parker seemed at a loss for words. The woman before him a stranger, a force of nature. Major Mitchell. Permission to join the operation. Emma considered him for a long, silent moment, weighing his request. "This isn't a training exercise, Lieutenant. The suspect is dangerous. He's already facilitated the deaths of American soldiers." "I understand, ma'am," Parker said, standing straighter, his voice firmer. "But I've worked with the suspect daily for 3 years. My presence might help prevent escalation." What he didn't say, but Emma read clearly in his eyes, was his desperate need for redemption. For 5 years he had treated her with casual, often cruel, dismissal. This was his chance to prove himself, to stand beside the officer he now recognized as extraordinary. Emma exchanged a glance with the colonel, who gave a slight, approving nod. Very well. Stay behind me. Follow my commands instantly. And if I say drop, you hit the ground without question. Clear? Crystal clear, ma'am, Parker replied, relief and determination warring in his voice. Emma handed him a tactical radio, adjusting the frequency with swift, sure fingers. Channel 2. Call sign is Razor 6. No names over comms. Understood. Razor 6. Parker accepted the equipment, his respect for her now absolute, etched into every line of his face. As they prepared to move out, Rodriguez appeared at the doorway. Request permission to join, Major. I was on comms with the suspect during previous patrol incidents. Might spot something others would miss. Emma checked her watch. Gear up, 2 minutes. We move on my mark. As Rodriguez hurried to comply, Parker studied the tactical display, his face grim. I still can't believe it's Wilson. All this time. That's how deep cover traitors operate, Lieutenant, Emma replied, checking the straps on her tactical vest. They're trusted, respected, above suspicion. Her eyes met his, sharp, intelligent. That's why it took someone equally deep undercover to expose them. Emma's mind flashed briefly to her first day at North Lake 5 years ago. The deliberate slouch she'd adopted. The carefully cultivated persona of the competent but utterly unremarkable driver. The way she had methodically, ruthlessly suppressed every instinct, every habit, every reflex from her years of elite training. Wilson accessed the patrol route files at EO-200 this morning. Emma continued, her voice a low, lethal monotone. Transmitted the coordinates via ORO-230. The ambush was set by dawn. Her expression hardened, the mask of the operator slipping to reveal the cold, righteous fury beneath. He knew exactly what would happen. Rodriguez returned, now clad in tactical gear. Ready, Major? Emma nodded, performing a final swift equipment check. Remember, she said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room, Wilson is an intelligence asset. He needs to be taken alive for interrogation. Her eyes hardened, the green depths turning to ice. But he's already complicit in the deaths of American soldiers. Consider him dangerous, and assume he's armed. She led them through a rapid, comprehensive briefing on Wilson's probable location, known associates, potential escape routes, and contingency plans. Her tactical assessment was flawless, considering factors and scenarios that spoke to years of operating in the deadliest environments on Earth. Questions, she concluded. Both men shook their heads, clearly awed by the depth and precision of her briefing. Then we move out. Maintain calm discipline. Standard tactical spacing. Minutes later, Emma led her team through the darkened, silent corridors of North Lake's administrative section. Her movements were fluid, silent, a ghost gliding through the shadows. Nothing like the deliberately average plodding presence she'd maintained for 5 long years. Parker watched her in stunned amazement. The transformation was complete. Every step, every gesture radiated elite training, combat-honed experience. This was a woman who had walked through hell and emerged stronger, a warrior who had faced the world's most lethal threats and prevailed. Target entering primary communications hub, reported the surveillance team through their earpieces. Alone, as predicted, Emma signaled the team to hold position outside the main entrance. She turned to Parker and Rodriguez. Remember, this individual has sold out fellow soldiers for profit. They're responsible for today's ambush and at least 3 previous attacks. Her voice was low, intense, filled with a cold, righteous fury. They won't surrender easily. Both men nodded grimly. The betrayal of a brother-in-arms was the deepest, most unforgivable sin in their world. Emma keyed her radio. All teams in position. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark! They breached the communications center with lethal, practiced precision. Emma led, her weapon drawn but controlled, moving like liquid shadow directly towards the main terminal where their target sat, bathed in the glow of monitors. Staff Sergeant Wilson, Emma called out, her voice clear, sharp, cutting through the hum of electronics. Step away from the terminal. Place your hands behind your head. Wilson froze, then slowly turned. Confusion flickered across his face, then morphed into dawning, horrified recognition as his eyes took in Emma's tactical gear, the proud, undeniable PJ tattoo on her arm. "Mitchell?" he breathed, his voice tight with disbelief. "You're not." "Transportation. Major Emma Mitchell, Special Operations Command, Intelligence Division," Emma stated, her voice carrying the full crushing weight of her authority, her rank, her righteous fury. "You're under arrest for espionage, treason, and the sale of classified information to enemy combatants." Wilson's eyes darted to the exits, calculating impossible odds. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Emma said, her voice cold, flat, "we can." She nodded to Rodriguez, who moved swiftly to the terminal. "Your access credentials were used to retrieve today's patrol route at 0200 this morning. The exact ambush coordinates were transmitted from your personal device. 30 minutes later." Wilson's face paled as Rodriguez confirmed the access logs on the terminal. "Your authentication code. Your terminal. Your transmission pattern. Same as the previous incidents." Rodriguez's voice was calm, factual, damning. "You've been watched, Wilson." "For how long?" 5 years, Emma replied evenly, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Wilson's hand moved, slow, desperate, towards his waistband. "Don't," Emma warned, her weapon steady, her voice dropping to a lethal, chilling whisper. "That would be a mistake." There was nothing of the quiet, deferential driver in her now. Her stance was lethal, her expression utterly devoid of mercy. She was death incarnate, given form and purpose. Wilson hesitated, desperation warring with terror in his eyes. "You don't understand. They had leverage. I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," Emma replied, her voice like ice. "You chose money over your brothers and sisters in arms. American soldiers died because of the information you sold." Her mind flashed to the aftermath of previous ambushes. The flag-draped coffins, the hollow eyes of grieving families, the memorial services where she had stood in the back, watching, collecting, building her case while wearing the mask of Sergeant Mitchell. The tension in the room was a living thing, thick and suffocating. Wilson weighed his options, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. "It's over, Wilson," Emma continued, her voice relentless. "We have your offshore accounts, your contact protocols, the encryption keys you used, every piece of intelligence you passed." Her voice hardened, became a blade, including the details that led to today's ambush. Something broke in Wilson. With a guttural cry of rage and despair, he lunged for his weapon. Emma moved. It was a blur, a strike of impossible speed and precision. Before Wilson's hand could even close around his sidearm, Emma had closed the distance. A precise, disabling strike to his wrist, a twist, a controlled, brutal takedown that sent him crashing face first to the cold floor, her knee pinning him. His arm wrenched into a control hold that made him gasp in agony. The entire sequence happened in less than a second. Parker and Rodriguez barely registered the movement. One moment, Wilson was reaching for his weapon. The next, he was pinned, helpless, gasping. "Weapons secured," Emma reported calmly into her radio, as if she'd just filed a routine report. "Evidence preserved. Requesting transport team." Parker stared, his jaw slack with awe. The takedown had been textbook perfection, executed with a level of skill that defied belief. "Jesus," Rodriguez whispered, his voice filled with stunned reverence. "I've never seen anyone move that fast." Emma secured Wilson's second hand in the restraints, performing a methodical clinical search for additional weapons or evidence. Her movements were precise, professional, devoid of wasted motion or unnecessary force. 5 years. Wilson spat, his face pressed against the floor, his voice thick with venom and defeat. "You've been watching me for 5 years. Who the hell are you?" Emma didn't respond, her focus absolute. She located a concealed flash drive hidden in his boot, securing it as evidence. "Secondary storage device recovered," she reported into her radio. "Likely contains backup of sold intelligence." As security personnel arrived to take the snarling, defeated Wilson into custody, Rodriguez's eyes were drawn again to Emma's torn sleeve. The full pararescue tattoo was now clearly, undeniably visible to everyone. The dagger piercing the wings, the complete sacred motto inscribed beneath, "These things we do, that others may live." The security team escorted Wilson out, his face a mask of impotent fury. Only when he was gone did Emma finally allow herself a moment, rolling her shoulders to release the coiled tension that had built up over hours of high-stakes operations. "Terminal secured," Rodriguez reported, having locked down the communication systems. "All evidence preserved for forensic analysis." Emma nodded, conducting a final meticulous sweep of the area. Her thoroughness was instinctive, the habit of someone who knew that overlooking a single detail could mean death. "So that's it?" Parker asked, his voice quiet, filled with awe. 5 years undercover comes to an end." Emma watched her target being led away, her expression unreadable, a mask of professional calm. "This part of the mission?" "Yes." She rolled her shoulders again as if shedding a weight carried for too long. "There's still the prosecution, the network dismantling, the damage assessment." She accessed the terminal, initiating a specialized security protocol with swift, confident keystrokes. "Wilson wasn't working alone," she explained, displaying network connection logs. "His contacts will need to be identified and neutralized, the full extent of the compromised intelligence assessed and mitigated." She turned to Parker, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "But your cover identity, Sergeant Emma Mitchell, transportation specialist, completes her tour of duty at North Lake and transfers out." For the first time, Parker saw something like genuine, unguarded satisfaction in Emma's eyes. 5 years of deep cover, of being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated, was finally, gloriously complete. Was it worth it? He asked quietly, the question bursting from him. 5 years? Of being treated the way we treated you? Emma's eyes met his, steady, certain, filled with a quiet, unshakable conviction. 7 ambushes prevented. 23 enemy operatives identified and neutralized. And as of tonight, no more American soldiers will die because of Wilson's betrayal. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Yes, Lieutenant. It was worth it." As they exited the communications center, they found the corridor lined with soldiers, members of the patrol unit who had witnessed Emma's true, terrifying capabilities in combat. They stood at rigid, perfect attention, offering a silent, profound salute to the woman who had hidden among them for 5 years, working tirelessly, invisibly, to protect them. Emma paused, momentarily taken aback by the display of raw, unvarnished respect. For 5 years, she had been invisible by design, overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. Now, she stood revealed, her sacrifice, her service, her true identity acknowledged at last. Cooper, his arm bandaged from the wound Emma had identified in the helicopter, stepped forward. "Major, we just wanted to say thank you for today and for whatever you've been doing here all this time." Emma nodded once, accepting the acknowledgement with quiet, stoic dignity. "Just doing my job, Specialist." "Your job?" Another soldier echoed, his voice thick with awe. "All this time we thought—" "You thought exactly what you were supposed to think," Emma replied, her tone softening just a fraction. "That was the point." Major Richards appeared at the end of the corridor, supported by a medical orderly but standing tall, at rigid attention despite his injuries. "Major Mitchell," he called out, his voice strong, formal. "The men and women of North Lake Base would like to thank you for your service." Emma squared her shoulders, the weight of her true rank settling onto her with perfect, natural ease, and returned the salute with flawless, textbook military precision. "Just doing my duty, sir." As she walked through the corridor of saluting soldiers, men and women who had barely acknowledged her existence for 5 years, Emma's PJ tattoo seemed to blaze against her skin. The wings and dagger, the symbol of an elite force whose sacred creed bound them to sacrifice everything for others. "These things we do, that others may live." For 5 long, arduous years, Emma Mitchell had lived that creed in the shadows, a ghost haunting the halls of North Lake, a silent guardian angel with a rifle and a tourniquet. Tonight she wore it proudly, defiantly, in the light. The colonel was waiting at the end of the corridor, his expression one of quiet, profound pride. "Well done, Mitchell." "Mission complete, sir?" Emma nodded. "Not quite," the colonel replied firmly, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "We still need to identify Wilson's external contacts. Even now, with her cover blown, her primary mission accomplished, her focus remained razor-sharp, fixed on the job. The habits of an elite operator ran too deep to be easily set aside. "Tomorrow," the colonel said, his voice brooking no argument. "Tonight, I think you've earned a moment to breathe." He studied her face, noting the fatigue she kept so carefully hidden beneath her professional mask. 5 years undercover? That's a long time to be someone else. Emma's expression revealed nothing, but something flickered deep in her eyes. A fleeting acknowledgement of the immense personal cost, the isolation, the constant vigilance, the necessity of suppressing her true self, day after grueling day, year after endless year. It wasn't all bad. "Sir," she said quietly, a ghost of a genuine smile touching her lips, "I learned a lot about this base, about the men and women who serve here." Her eyes flicked towards Parker, a hint of dry, almost affectionate humor in her gaze. "Even Lieutenant Parker has his moments." Parker, overhearing, looked both deeply embarrassed and oddly, profoundly pleased by the backhanded compliment. The colonel chuckled. "Your final assessment report will make interesting reading, I'm sure." He gestured towards the exit. "Now go get some rest, Major. That's an order." Emma nodded, the ingrained discipline of a lifetime overriding any personal desire to keep working. "Yes, sir." As she walked away, the soldiers parted to let her pass, their expressions a complex tapestry of awe, deep respect, and a palpable, abiding shame for how they had treated her for 5 long years. "I still can't believe it," Rodriguez said quietly to Parker as they watched her disappear around the corner. 5 years. Playing a role every single day. Never letting the mask slip. Parker nodded slowly, the lesson seared into his soul. "That's why they call them special operations, I guess. They do what the rest of us can't." Emma Mitchell disappeared into the night, heading towards the officers' quarters she would now rightfully occupy. Behind her, she left a base full of soldiers, their world irrevocably shaken, questioning everything they thought they knew about the quiet driver who had hidden among them. A ghost in plain sight, tomorrow would bring debriefings, intelligence analysis, the beginning of a new chapter. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, Emma Mitchell could simply be herself. If you're inspired by those who let their actions scream while they remain silent, if you crave more tales of quiet fury, unbreakable valor, and the warriors who redefine strength, then subscribe to Beyond True Tales right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you never miss an epic 7,000-word saga where the quietest heroes make the loudest impact. Join our community of those who know that the most dangerous weapon is often the one you never see coming. Your next dose of heart-stopping, soul-stirring true valor is just one click away. Subscribe now and step beyond the true tales you thought you knew.